Welcome back to our special edition of GMA Now On Call Plus Autism. Autism is a term used to describe a developmental disorder that can cause substantial problems in social interaction and communication. There are great differences in the levels of autism, from highly functioning and gifted to severely impaired. The cause or causes of autism have been frustratingly elusive, but there have been great strides in dealing with the disorder, from therapy to medications. We'll talk about all of that and more with our great panel of guests today. Joining us are two pediatricians who are leading the fight against autism. Dr. Lou Cooper is the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a professor emeritus of pediatrics at Columbia University. Dr. Ari Brown practices in Austin, Texas, and is a spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics. We also have three parents who have been dealing with autistic children for many years. Here in New York, Ken Rivel and actress Didi Khan, and in Los Angeles, actor Joe Mantegna. We'll be talking with these parents in just a moment, but first let's go to some of the basic facts about autism from our two doctors. And Ari, I'll start with you. A definitional question, which is, we tend now today to talk about the autism spectrum instead of just autism. What does that mean, and why are we doing that?
Well, because it is a spectrum of disorders, from children who are mildly affected to children who are severely affected. What the unifying themes are with children who fall on this entire spectrum are atypical communication skills, social skills, and repetitive behaviors. But how that impacts the child is really what gives them a particular label on where they are on that spectrum. So some children are diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome or pervasive developmental disorder or classic autism.
And that raises the question that as we talk about the increasing incidence of this disorder or this spectrum, we say it's growing rather rapidly. How much of that is, in fact, a real increase in cases versus an expansion of the definitions or being more skilled at diagnoses?
Right, and that's a great question, and the answer is we don't know. We really don't know. We know that some of it has to do with a change in diagnosis. If you look at children who used to be diagnosed with mental retardation, those rates are actually much lower now. It used to be 1 in 63, now it's 1 in 83. As those rates have gone down, the autism rates have definitely gone up. There's been a change in the definition of autism, which is definitely broader. That's why there's a spectrum, and people are recognizing this disorder. Parents are bringing concerns in to their pediatricians. Pediatricians are looking more closely and referring much more aggressively, and so more children are getting diagnosed. And then a third reason is really social acceptance and children who qualify for services. Before 1991, children diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum did not qualify for services in the public schools. Now they do, and parents want their children to get that diagnosis so that they are eligible for services. Before, it was maybe something they didn't want their child to be diagnosed with, because socially sometimes there was a stigma associated with it. Parents thought they were being bad parents, which is completely not true. But that is one of the things that kind of led people to shy away from that diagnosis.
So, Lou, you've obviously been on the scene for a while, seeing how this disease and our understanding of it has evolved. What are still the classic symptoms or signs that parents should worry about, should cause them to make an appointment with their pediatrician?
Well, first it's important to remember, as Ari said, it's a collection, a constellation of disorders with dramatic differences in severity. So what parents should be concerned about most simply is, are children moving forward on the expected milestones you'd expect for an infant and for a toddler? One of the big challenges that we all face is the new parent who doesn't have a repertoire of understanding. When should a child sit up? When should a child begin to babble? What is appropriate social interaction? And that social interaction is often the first clue that a child is not functioning or moving forward in a normal way.
And Ari, how often is the pattern one of a normal development up to a certain point and then a sudden or gradual regression?
Well, for the most part, children will be following a different path developmentally. Those signs may be very subtle in early infancy, and as a child goes through toddlerhood and clearly is not reaching milestones that you would expect for social skills and for language skills, the diagnosis becomes more obvious. And so that's why it's often not diagnosed until a child is 18 months or age 2, even though we'd like to diagnose it earlier than that. It's very rare to have a child where a parent says, he was completely normal, and then suddenly the lights turned off. We do see 25% of parents who will report a regression in a child's milestones. But if you actually look back at baby videos of those children, there are subtle signs that were always there in early infancy, and then the regression is what makes the parent very concerned and brings that to the doctor's attention.
There are now many websites that feature actual video that parents can look at in terms of trying to figure out what is normal and what might be abnormal. Are you finding those videos useful? Are parents finding them useful?
I think that anytime you can empower parents with information, accurate information, that's a good thing. And having videos readily accessible online gives a parent more information to be able to take to their pediatrician and say, hey, my child's not doing what I think they're supposed to. What do you think?
And Lua, very briefly, I'm sure you and Ari would both say that it's better to be concerned and err on the side of too much concern than to pass up something that might be significant.
Absolutely, and one of the important messages that we've tried to make sure every pediatrician has is not to dismiss parents' concerns. It's very clear that there was an era in which the typical and appropriate response seemed to be, let's watch and see, maybe he'll grow out of it.
Right.
I think today's pediatricians know that that's not the right response.
Coming up, we'll hear from parents Joe Mantegna, Didi Khan, and Ken Rybel about their personal experiences with autistic children.